There we go. Great. So yes, my name, for those of you who are new to me, is Caroline Carrington. I'm a certified Neo-Tantra teacher, and I run a school called Sarasa Tantra that invites people out of their heads and into their bodies to use pleasure as an access point for transformation. Tonight is not about me, and it's all about my dear friend, this beautiful goddess, who I'm so thrilled to introduce you to. Am I calling you? We didn't talk about this. Am I calling you Thea or Tara-Ma tonight?
Tara-Ma.
Tara-Ma.
Per favore.
Thank you. Tara-Ma.
Yes.
So welcome, Tara-Ma.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here. Our friendship has gone back so far, and we have, as I've mentioned, we have seen each other through so many different amazing and difficult, beautiful points in our lives. And so here we are, honoring each other for the path that we've been on to get here, our own healing and our desire to also help and heal other people, which has been quite a journey for me to get to even saying that, yes, I'm a healer. Yes, I want to show up and am showing up as a healer. So that's what I want to talk about today.
I'm really glad that I'm going to get to share you with my peeps and the world. So just to orient people a little bit, confidentiality is really important to me. So we have it set up that just Tara-Ma and myself will be on the screen. That's our intention. And just to, if you want to be double sure, I'm just going to orient you. I think after a year, most people are familiar with Zoom, but just in case for some reason people aren't, if you go to the center of your screen with your cursor and you look for the little, hover your cursor over the bottom, the chat button will pop up, and you might have to click on that, and then a menu should come on the right side. You should see a list of names, and you can, if you hover over your name, two buttons should come up. One says mute, the other says more with a downward arrow. And if you press that downward arrow, you can choose to rename yourself. We are recording this evening, so you could pick a fictitious name if you prefer. You could pick your spiritual name or your Burning Man name or your chosen name for this evening. But if you don't want, like your legal name on the screen, you are welcome to rename yourself. I did that earlier, and you can see I added my pronouns in, which can be a nice thing to do, so we're not making assumptions about people's gender. But our intention is to have only Tara-Ma and I on the screen this evening. So just as an extra precaution, I'm offering you that. Then in the chat function, I will be monitoring the chat as we explore tonight. Tara-Ma and I are gonna, I'm kind of saying chat amongst ourselves, but chat with you listening in. And then in the last portion, we're gonna create an opportunity for you to come and ask questions. So you can either put them in the chat, or we'll see how things are going. We may even open up that you can ask it on video. But I'll do my best to just ask the question anonymously so that once again we can honor the confidentiality. Okay, enough of the left brain boring stuff, but it's still important. So I want to just begin, Tara-Ma, with sharing a little bit about how you and I landed up on this call together. And some people may not know, but I originally moved to California in the US for Burning Man. And I had back in, I'm going to date myself, but 2005. Wow, feels like a lifetime ago. Went to Burning Man, and about a month after that, found myself in Santa Cruz at an unofficial Burning Man event with a really beautiful community that opened their hearts and welcomed me in. And it became pretty transformational. I got to meet Tara-Ma there, and we formed this really sweet friendship that has also continued despite geographical changes. Like me coming from Mexico now, I'm currently living in Mexico. You go back on the East Coast after being in the Bay Area for a while. But just as you referenced, Tara-Ma, we've gone through a lot together. We've gone through that community being this beautiful space and then kind of shifting when the venue wasn't available anymore. You and I were pregnant together in that community and having our, like, literally going through this journey into motherhood together. And one of the personal things for me that's really been a treasure is to share this journey of motherhood, because that's a deep initiation in and of itself. That's been a huge teacher to me, and I've loved that you've become one of the central people that I've stayed connected with from that community. And I'm so excited to celebrate this new tool in your toolbox. I know it's not new to you, but I've only done a little bit of Clarity Breathwork, so I'm going to be learning a lot from you as well this evening. And so why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what brought you to Clarity Breathwork today?
Well, when we met on that beach at that time, that really transformational time, I had been introduced to Clarity Breathwork by our mutual friend, Marty. And Marty Storm, the artist and breathwork, Clarity Breathworker. So she brought me in and she said, well, you have to try this wonderful modality of healing. And I said, sure, I'll do that. And I ended up going to India with that breathwork community in about 2006. And actually, I should backtrack and say, even before that happened, I did level 1 it was at Mount Shasta. And the year before that, that was the first time I had tried, Clarity Breathwork. I decided I would go to this workshop, and that coincided with my deciding this was going to be the time that I quit smoking. And I had been smoking for 17 years and tried to stop many, many times. And I know that it was the combination of doing the breath work and the healing waters of Mount Shasta that made me take that leap for good. It was like something shifted at that time. And I was able to become a non-smoker for many, 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 many years. And, I can't say I've never had a cigarette ever again, but I'm not a habitual smoker like I was at that time. And it was crucial for me to get, because addiction really signifies sometimes other things going on in our lives. It's an effect. So that was a real start for me to look beyond what that addiction was about. And I was able to start doing that with Clarity Breathwork. Of course, life happens at the same time, and here we are. We got pregnant, and our wonderful boys came along, and my life completely changed. And Burning Man parties on the beach we're coming to an end.
Right.
But that training and those tools really did stay with me because I was about to experience some very difficult first years. My first years of my son's life, the crash of 2008, crushing my business, and my decision eventually to move back to the East Coast to be closer to my family, to be able to have a life that was sustainable at that time, and an easier way for me to restart my business on the East Coast, which at that time was my art business, my jewelry design business, my craft jewelry business. So I was able to do all those things. And what I didn't realize until I got here was how much how much I was leaving behind. I was leaving behind breathwork. I was leaving behind my community. I was leaving behind that, more progressive point of view, progressive lifestyle of California. And I got here and, I had those tools in my toolbox. I did. From everything that happened on that beach, our Burning Man event that we went to, everything, all the seeds that were planted there, I brought with me. And one of them was, about leadership. And I don't know if you remember, but I used to create the circles at the beach. I would make everybody stand in a circle and look at each other and hold hands. I've never done anything like that before. I'm a follow the beat of my own drum person. I wasn't good at team sports. No, I wasn't. I just was my own person my whole life. And so this was really a first step into leadership and to creating a sacred space for people, gathering people into one place. And I just did it instinctively to help people to see each other. I just knew that was something important. And it was the first time in my life that younger women, I didn't even know I was 10 years older than most of the people there, to tell you the truth. But younger women would come up to me and say, that changed my life. I'd run into people later and they would say, I didn't, that was profound what you did. And it was just simple to me, like, let's all gather in a circle and look at each other. And there were people that didn't really know each other. And there we were on a beach dancing all night. And I thought maybe we should have this container. So fast forward to moving back to the East Coast. And I realized that I wanted to start an ecstatic dance, because one of the other things I left on the West Coast, besides beaches and breath work, was ecstatic dance, which I had started to get really into. Free movement, ecstatic dance is lots of people dancing in a room together without shoes, without expectations, without rules, except for creating this sacred container on a dance floor with no talking and no drug use, and with intention to connect to the body. And this was such a healing practice for me. I didn't even know. It was just fun. I just thought this is something that is, I just don't know what I would do without it. It was just something that felt so important to me. And I wanted to create that here where I live, which is Providence, Rhode Island, the area, I live near Providence, but the Rhode Island area, because they didn't have it. And so I stepped into leadership at that time, which was around 2011. And I did create a very small community, but has finally grown over time, of conscious dancers in our area. And then ecstatic dance showed up in Boston and New York and Western Mass, which shone the light on my ecstatic dance even more, which was great. And up until the pandemic, we started to get a lot of people together. And I had at that point also started DJing and creating music for the dance. So, in all these ways, I was beginning to step into leadership and then step into healing through the ecstatic dance and through movement and creating these spaces for people. So that's been a really profound change. And all along, I have stayed with as I said, the tools that I learned through breath work, but the practice itself and the idea of becoming a facilitator wasn't, or just didn't feel accessible to me, because our teachers were in California and I was here and they were off doing workshops in Bali and Mexico and Hawaii, and that, as a single mom living on the East Coast trying to run an art business and doing craft shows all the time wasn't accessible. So pandemic hit and they decided to go online. And I can't say, I wish, that I'm happy that a pandemic happened. Not at all. But there have been some opportunities like that. And I think the ways that people have, not just Clarity Breathwork, the ways people have utilized online education and gathering, it has really, has opened up a lot more opportunities for people. So it did for me. And I, a year ago, hopped on board when they said, join our beta group. We're going to try teaching you guys, Clarity Breathwork. We're going to try providing Clarity Breathwork, because basically the beginning levels of Clarity Breathwork are really about self-healing. And then, it's an opportunity to take it further. So I did. And that's what I've been doing in the past year, is getting this training. I decided along the way, you know what, I'm just going to take it all the way, because the pieces started to fit together. Everything that I had been doing, from that freeing of my soul, body, wild child spirit on the beach, and my my Kundalini energy opening up along the way, just small things like that, were the tools, were the seeds to me getting to this point. And the rest really has been about self-healing. And that I have had a lot of opportunities in the past few years for that to come up. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019, so almost 2 years ago. So that was a big shock. And I survived it fine. I made it through, and the challenge is always to be healthy enough that it doesn't come back. But the big lesson in that was really about self-care and doing more, diving further into what was coming up. And that was another reason that breath work had been on my mind. Like, what can, I don't want to sit with a therapist, and think that that's going to help me. It's helpful. Talking to a therapist can be helpful, but I knew enough that something more direct, something more somatic was going to help me even more. So it was really serendipitous that training came along when it did, because I was just at the end of the major part of that breast cancer journey, and I was really ready to I was open enough and raw enough to let that healing be effective, you know? So I can say from this personal experience of a long time ago of overcoming an addiction to um, knowing that through the breast cancer journey that there was more for me, to knowing that from a pandemic and then subsequently from one of my dearest friends suddenly passing away, a sister friend, you know, who passed away just a few months ago. All these parts were just reminders that how important it is for us to take advantage of the short time that we have here on Earth.
Right. Well,
We
that's
work hard.
very, I mean, it's very relevant to all of us living through a pandemic. I mean, I've never lived through one before. I didn't even really know what it was when they first announced it. But just going back to what you were sharing, that one of, and again, not to take away from the challenges and even the trauma for people. I know I've seen that in my own family, that the pandemic has also brought with it. But one of the gifts has been this elimination of the barriers of geography. So, like you said, it was hard for you being on the East Coast to study with these teachers, and suddenly it was online, right? And this is the great thing. I mean, I love it that you're sitting in Rhode Island and I'm sitting in Mexico. And as long as you can make the time zones work, being able to connect with people online actually gives us wonderful opportunities to work with folks that we may not normally have had access to. And I really want to commend you, Tara-Ma, for going out and really breaking ground in your own community. I mean, it's sometimes easy in California where everything's open and people are kind of into alternative things. And it's really trailblazing to go and be like, great, there's no ecstatic dance. I'll make it happen. So I just love that you've already paved the way in so many ways. And perhaps all of us being a little renegade on that beach, helped us to do some renegade. I'm now living in a Catholic country and, they're not exactly as open to Neo-Tantra as they were in the Bay Area. Even chanting mantras is very different. Mm-hmm. So I just celebrate that in you, that you've created these opportunities and you birth in community and offering yourself really as this incredible resource for people.
Thank you.
So I know a little bit about Clarity Breathwork because I did 2 sessions with a friend when I was pregnant, so many, many years ago now. Now I have a teenager. But I did a handful of sessions as I was getting ready to give birth. And you had actually recommended, you should try this thing. I didn't know anything about somatic therapy at the time. But what is it? Like for somebody who's never heard of it before, because I teach breath work, but I teach, yogic breath work. So what is clarity breath work?
Clarity breath work is a style of breath work, and there are many, that allows one to access the subconscious through a very gentle circular breath. I'll give a quick example. So it's a breath that's done through the mouth, and it's an enthusiastic inhale and a very gentle exhale. It can be done even slower than that. It really depends on the speed of which feels comfortable for the breather. And it is a guided journey. It is that breath And it is doing that breath with somebody who is guiding you with their voice, keeping you staying with the breath, encouraging you to discover what might be coming up in the body. That's the physical practice of it. This can be done in groups. It can be done in private session, and it is an opportunity to unravel um, limiting beliefs we have that are imprinted from birth, can be even imprinted from conception. And clarity breathwork actually came out of a movement in the 1960s called rebirthing. So it was a kind of a next evolution of rebirthing, because they knew that the the experience of birth, actually knowing what had happened in our birth, can give us a lot of clues as to what is coming up in our lives, in our relationships, because those imprinted moments, like birth is one of the most traumatic things we can go through. So that, plus early childhood experiences, relationships with our parents, all of those things that happen in a very young age are imprinted on us and show up in our patterns of behavior. So this is fairly well known in somatic healing in general. It's not new. And trauma healing is a huge, buzz phrase now. People are understanding how important it is to know, as facilitators, to understand trauma, and as individual people to know that what we might have thought was normal or okay or part of growing up might have been something far more traumatic that causes patterns in us, everything from stress to physical ailments to depression and addictions and difficulty in our relationships. So breath work and clarity breath work, it provides an opportunity to unravel those behaviors, our thoughts, beliefs, maybe identify the limiting beliefs that arise as part of those patterns. For example, I understood very early on in my experience with breathwork that my biggest limiting belief was, there's something wrong with me. There's just something wrong with me. Which is also like saying I'm not good enough. And those messages for me come up still. I'm still unraveling. I'm not good enough. And I think that's fairly common in our society, and it might be even more common with
Absolutely. That's why I'm nodding. That's why I'm nodding so enthusiastically, not because I think you are not worthy, but because I think many of us can resonate with that.
Yeah, there's messages all the time. We're not thin enough, we're not smart enough, we're not worthy enough, we're not, you name it. So in breath work, we can identify what that limiting belief is. For some people, it's I'm not safe. Or yeah, that's just another very good example. That's one that comes up a lot for some people. So we can work on shifting those limiting beliefs. And when you're doing it with a breath, it becomes an experience, a physical somatic experience. And so if you're just thinking about changing something, if you're cognitively saying or understanding something can be changed versus shifting something in your body while you're actually making a physical movement, you can change it. I think from my own personal experience and what I've seen working with different clients and being in the workshops is that these changes can happen much faster by by accessing where those feelings, emotions might be coming up in the body, literally physically. You've got a throat. I'll use my own example. Even before I understood anything about breath work, I ended up with a therapist who was like, "You keep holding your throat, Thea. What's going on?" I'm like, "It's tight. It hurts." And she said, "What is it you want to say? And I realized I didn't even know I had a voice. I didn't even know that I had been holding back. And all of this stuff in my family unraveled in that moment. Like, oh, right. I was mute for a lot of my childhood because there were other people in my family who were very vocal, who commanded attention in that space. And I just felt like I did not have a voice. So all of that pain came up in my throat. So that was a clue. So these connections of what happens in our body physically to what might be going on in our lives habitually in in patterns that are hard to break. Yeah, I know and I've seen how well breath work can identify and break down and shift these patterns. And
And I
there's
love,
there's
I
one other piece. Sorry, just one other piece that I realized was important. That clarity breath work is also it's in its sense like a way of it's a paradigm shift, for lack of a better term, because it's asking us to shift ourselves even more deeply, more consciously by by shifting away from this idea that we are separate. That's a bigger thing to understand and wrap our brains around. We feel alone and we feel separate from everything else. And it's when we can let go of that separateness and realize that we are all connected, that we can shift our greater understanding of humanity.
right. And I think in this very unusual time of the pandemic we're living in, a lot of people are feeling isolated and alone. So, as a trauma survivor myself and also a practitioner who works with trauma survivors, firstly, trauma, actually, I only learned this a few years ago, literally gets lodged in the fascia in our bodies. It's like it's that deeply in the body. One of my teachers, Krishna Das, says we can't think ourselves out of the prison that we've created in our minds. And he's talking about mantra as opposed to clarity breathwork or neo tantra, for example. But it's like in therapy, and I'm a big proponent of therapy, but they're engaging this part of you mostly. And what I'm hearing you say is in clarity breathwork, you're engaging the whole body, the breath, like noticing where the blockages are in the energetic and the physical body. And that's huge. And I love what you said about when you shared about needing to allow space for your voice to be heard. I'm learning things about you, even though I've known you. I think it's going on 16 years now. I'm learning a lot in this because I know you as a singer, and I know you as somebody who's not afraid to speak. But so often when we've been silenced, either as children or, could be silenced in relationships, or we're so in service, or whatever we do when we shut ourselves down, could be the voice, could be in other parts. But I notice I work with a lot of sexual trauma survivors, and so often this is where we need to just start for people to have their no, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a couple of other choice words I give my students to share, just to like find the power there. So I actually love that you speaking to that. And also, it's so interesting, even knowing you for all these years, I was like, well, I know because you made an album at one stage as well, didn't you?
No, I mean, I've recorded music
You were in a
in
recording
my
studio.
20s. Yeah, yes, I did.
Yes. Well, anyway, I know that's going back to the recesses of my mind, but in my experience, I was like, here's this wonderful woman sharing her voice, and yet in your personal journey, you still had to find, and it can be a continual process, right? This empowerment of our
Yeah.
voices. So I'm curious like how you met your teachers, and it's Ashana and Dana, right? Or your other, they created Clarity Breathwork, is that right? Out of rebirthing.
There was a third person who, his first name is Peter, forget his last name, but he and Dana were partnered. They were married. And so when I met them, they were working as a trio of teachers. And Ashana had been their student. And so uh, that's how she came along. And Peter and Dana split. And so Dana and Ashana over time decided that they had a dynamic relationship and a symbiotic relationship for teaching, which they do. They're very, very different people. And they know that. And so, but they have made such a great example, actually, of how to work with somebody, how to partner with somebody who's very different from you, and how you get through the things that come up, because they actually do complement each other beautifully. So yes, they I don't know if it was particularly them or it was somebody else before them who coined the name Clarity Breathwork, but I think it was them. It was Dana and Peter. And so she's been teaching for over 40 years. And
Uh,
Breathwork has caught on. I mean, I have more than once heard this. I don't love this term, but I've heard people say it's the new yoga, which really kind of makes me ill to think like, it's just a fad. But I'm glad at the same time that it is catching on, because it is so simple. It is a tool that we have with us all the time, every day, and can be used and has been used. When you look at ancient cultures and Indian cultures and the way we understand pranic breathing and how effective that is. So breath work can be effective just by sitting, and this kind of um, kundalini yoga breathing, right? Breathing out of one side and then the other, and but the clarity breath work,
comes from hatha yoga, actually. But,
yeah, yeah. Well, no, kundalini, they actually
sorry,
just
alternate nostril breathing comes from, yeah. I just want to be careful for the classical tantrikas. It comes from
I'm not well versed in
Hindu
it.
yoga, and
I learned it from a Kundalini teacher. Kundalini yoga. Um, but but with clarity breath work, the process of it goes deeper than that. It is a full hour of breathing, and it's in a private session. It's a full hour of communicating and talking and understanding, whatever is coming up with that person. The talk part of it is important. It's the information, and so we're, as a facilitator, I'm working with a client to identify what's coming up for them, what their relationships are looking like, what their birth story is. That's really important, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating to recognize that somebody who's had a really fast birth can be a person who's like running around all the time, and always ahead of themselves or ahead of other people, and always like waiting for other people. That really, it does show up. It is a pattern. It is reflective. Our behaviors are reflective of our birth story. So that often gives us a lot of information. But in the end, it is a practice. I am facilitating somebody healing themselves. They are coming. I'm not telling them, well, this is what you're feeling now, or you should be feeling this coming up now. I am opening the floor to them for them to identify and tell me what's going on in their body now, what's coming up in their emotion. And then I can help them kind of put those pieces together. But they've done the work. They have identified in themselves often, and it's pretty miraculous sometimes what people come out and say. They can be like amazing aha moments. They can, and it is a connection to the divine as well. We are inviting in um, spirit guides and our teachers, any kind, any energy that can help support us in that space. And so that can be pretty eye-opening, and that can invite um, loved ones who have passed can show up, and it really depends on that person who's breathing and the facilitator and what kind of open channels we have. But I have seen that happen. I've experienced that for myself as well. So there's a divine aspect of clarity breath work. We call it the artistic side. There's more of a scientific side to breath. There's a lot of science on breath. There's a lot of information on how we could access the subconscious with breath. But there's this spiritual side as well. And so I like, and I want to bring more of that in personally as a facilitator, and bring that intuition. And what I automatically bring in is my intuition. So
Beautiful. And I mean, intuition, I believe, comes from our direct connection to ourselves and to spirit.
yeah.
So I I love what you were saying about, this is really about the person being empowered through their own experience. And it sounds like you're the facilitator and the guide for them and holding the safe space, but it's really them creating the breakthroughs. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes. 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 We are the guide.
So one of one of the things that I know I've done a little bit of holotropic breath work. I've been in big rooms in Joshua Tree with Michael Brian Baker, for example, and and I've been a little overwhelmed or like worried, like, will this be too much, or will I, as a trauma survivor, I do have to watch that I don't get dysregulated in my nervous system. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you create safety, maybe both in private sessions, if we were to work one-on-one together, and just as a disclaimer, I've never experienced, this is part of why I'm excited to interview you about this, because I haven't done this with you, but either in a one-on-one and or in a group workshop, like, how do you create that safety for somebody like me? I like to be perfect at everything and an expert at everything, even when I'm new, which I know is like not even possible, right? But so how do you support people in finding that safety, either through the container or your facilitation, so that they feel comfortable letting go?
Mm. Well, it definitely takes practice. Um, but I'd say that the gentle breath versus a holotropic breath, which is very energetic, very high energy. The clarity breath is slow and gentle, and so a person breathing this way who has difficult feelings coming up, has a reaction, has a trigger, um, can be guided back to the breath a little more easily. It tends to discourage, like just naturally discourage people from becoming re-traumatized in that moment. And that was a big, important aspect of it for me, because I did do holotropic breath work initially, and I had experienced being re-traumatized, and I had experienced guides pushing me towards anger, and that was not the right thing for me to dive further into anger. My head blew off. Like, it was too much. And clarity breath work was slower and gentler and allowed what was happening underneath that anger to come up and be seen and be felt. So it takes practice as a facilitator to help people through that. It takes practice as the breather to stay with the breath. And often, really, what I've seen more can happen is a person dissociating and poof, kind of just going under, going a little bit, instead of staying with it. So there may be a little bit more challenge that way to keep people above that space of going unconscious. But that is, again, part of the discovery, because maybe a person going unconscious was born with drugs. The mom was drugged, and that happened a lot. Moms who were giving birth and were heavily medicated, that imprint on a baby is permanent. That can lead to drug addiction, that can lead to unconscious behavior, that can lead to resistance, dissociation. So there's definitely a lot of that. So when people who are triggering really heavily, it's important to know some aspect of trauma therapy. So I am in the process of studying more of that, and I feel like as a clarity breathwork practitioner, it will be essential for me to learn more about trauma healing, as you have done. And when you did that, and when you started doing that, I'm actually really impressed and really happy, because I know that is a really important part of what you're doing as well. So I feel like, yes, I'm on this path. There's a lot of help that I can, there's a lot of ways I can help people. And if somebody comes to me and they've got a lot going on, if they are seriously addicted to something, I might refer them to a professional.
Right. So I love hearing you say that, because we do need to know as facilitators, like, what our skill set is, and then when things are, beyond our training. And I actually sometimes work in conjunction with trauma therapists. If somebody really isn't able to stay in their body and be in their body when we engage in Neo-Tantra, I'm like, wow, you need to go and do some EMDR or some somatic experiencing, and then we work as a team together. So thank you for highlighting that, because I'm a big fan of both knowing our own limits as teachers, but then also helping people get the support they need. And I love what you were saying, Tara-Ma, about really this breath being gentle. I notice my whole nervous system actually, I want to use trauma language, down-regulated, but I calmed down, because I've also, even in Neo-Tantra practices, had people push me, or I'd be in group workshops and they're like, we're going to get mad now. And I'm like a triple type A. I want to do everything. And I never want to disappoint, the teacher or something. And it's actually put me directly into a trauma response.
Yeah.
So I'd love hearing that this practice, while very potent, is also gentle.
Yes.
Because I think far too often, especially I'm imagining, I happen to know Ashana and Dana, and they're so lovely. So I imagine they do it, do it really well, and you've been trained beautifully. But some people, even though they've gone and gotten some kind of weekend workshop training, I know you've done a lot more than that, but they push people so far past their limits.
Mhm.
And so whoever's listening to this, like, really do listen in. If something feels like too much, honor that. And it sounds like that's a huge part of your approach as well, to really be honoring of where the student is. Do you use client or student? I always use student with my people.
Client, but
Client. Okay. Everybody uses different different terms.
I like to say the breather, you know?
Breather. I love that. That's, neurolinguistically, that's like keeping the focus on the breath. And it's one of the things when people study with me, they often say, wow, like you really pay a lot of attention to the breath. I've never heard anybody pay so much attention. Breath is profound. So I'm really, it actually draws me closer to wanting to learn more about
Mhm.
clarity breath work, because you're telling me there's the space for it to be gentle. I'm noticing as I get older, I don't always want to do the most extreme, the most intense everything. I've done a lot of that in my life. And like the allowing as opposed to the forcing or trying to ram the wall of something, that, yeah, that can reinforce again.
And
So
I do want to reiterate that Ashana did a 3 year trauma healing training. She brings a lot to that team. And so they're out there doing their workshops and they're, pre-pandemic, they were at festivals. Know that they are really well trained from their experience and from the training, the further training they've done. And they know how important um, learning about trauma healing and the facilitation is good. And they were very clear in advising us when to when to refer to somebody else.
I
And
love hearing that, because unfortunately that's not often taught in trainings. And I think it's really important because, there are things that, even though I have done a lot of study with trauma, and you mentioned this earlier about having to do a lot of your own work to be able to facilitate for people. I often say to my students, I'm working 10 times as hard on myself so that I can hold the space for you for the journey I'm going to invite you on. So I think that's important. And, for example, if somebody was suicidal or something, that I am not trained to manage that. I know some of the questions to ask, but you need an expert who really knows. There are things that, you know, we are not trained for. And that's why that's why, I mean, therapists, I do think, play a vital role as well.
that said, I have to mention there in the training were two different trained, experienced therapists who who wanted to take this training because they had experienced breath work for themselves and were very clear in saying, "Oh, this is effective. This is going to help my clients more than the talking is going to help."
Right.
And again, we're separating that out from people who need a specific kind of help. They might need medical help, but the vast majority of people that are dealing with stress, and how much of us are dealing with stress right now, and just like I said before, limiting beliefs, and it's just like hard to get out of that vicious pattern of thinking um, what we think about ourselves and what how we speak to ourselves. And I've been particularly thinking more about wanting to help women um, who are dealing with body issues, because that's been my journey as well. So I'm going to be thinking and working on that, and yeah, creating some um, opportunity, I'd say, to do some group work with people around body and movement and shifting our limiting beliefs around body awareness and food and addiction and
So
what
relevant to
you
this
know.
time, right? Because I read a statistic the other day. I didn't prep it for this call, but I think it said that people's eating issues and eating disorders have gone up like 40% in the pandemic. I know alcohol sales went through the roof the first month of shelter in place in California. So a lot of us have taken on these coping mechanisms that aren't necessarily serving us, that are like a band-aid. So I love it that you're going to be offering group classes. And it sounds like, I just want to make sure I've got this right. People can come and do, some people get a little shy. They don't always want to be in a group. So they can choose to work one-on-one and have a private session with you.
Yes, I'm
Or
already
they,
working with people privately. I can do that over Zoom, and I can do that in person. In my home, I have a special space I've already created for the breath work in person, and that of course will come along with protocols and vaccinations, and as we shift into being able to gather in person again. Um, but in the meantime, yes, I can do sessions on Zoom, and I am going to be offering some events combining dance and movement and some intros to breath work. So we're going to start with that because I just want people to get more familiar with me and to understand also this connection between what I have been doing, which is creating space for people to dance, which I have done on Zoom as well. I had a lot more in the beginning of the pandemic, and then I sort of realized, oh, I need time to, I need to take advantage of this time to learn some new things. So I am slowly coming back into it, and my next event is going to be on Earth Day, April 22nd, and it is going to be a combination of ecstatic dance and an intro to breath work. So we'll experience the breath. We'll go through like lying down and positioning your screen so I can see you. We'll do the breath for maybe 10 minutes. So not a big long journey, but kind of understanding like what it feels like to do it. So
so giving people an amuse-bouche of what it would be like. So they get a taste of it.
yes.
But in a very, I love this, in a very safe, for me, safety. It was interesting earlier you've talked a lot actually about limiting beliefs, which is something I'm working on personally in my life. But, this feeling of safety, not everybody walks around with that in the world. And with so much trauma on the airwaves, given the way that, 2020 went, I love hearing that you're creating safe spaces for people to dip their toes in, and then if they want more, they can keep
Yes.
engaging you.
I
Yeah.
do. I want to keep creating a way for people to learn about it and just understand it because it is sort of odd. Why how is breath going to help us? So we'll learn more about that. And my
Well, now
first event is free. I'm offering it free, and
the class is free. Even I didn't know that, and I'm your friend.
first one is free. This because I'm just getting back in. I'm going to offer my dancing, and it's really just an intro. It's not a full blown breathwork ceremony, which I have done as well. I co-led in our level 5. We did student co-led 2-hour ceremonies. Well, hour and a half, and that included music and mantra and setting an intention and leading a group of 60 people in the breath work. And so that was an amazing experience. So yes, I would like to do that again. I'd like to team up with maybe some of my other um, student or yes, some of the other students, um, and or maybe somebody doing, I have some ideas. There's so many people I'd love to partner with in doing some of these ceremonies, people who have other skills to offer. Yeah, and I was doing that a lot with the ecstatic dance before the pandemic hit. That became my focus, was to team up with other people who were offering something in the community, whether it was yoga or belly dance or cacao ceremony. Of course, that was a huge hit. Was doing the ecstatic dance and cacao. But we will not be doing ecstatic dance, cacao, and clarity breathwork, because the cacao is
Yeah.
energizing. You want to go do holotropic breath work with that. That's a great combination. Yeah.
Well, I love hearing your mindfulness, Tara-Ma, and how some people just want to keep adding more fire. We see this in the Neo Tantra world all the time. And I'm like, Neo Tantra focuses on sacred sexuality, and that's enough fire in and of itself. So I love it that you're speaking to this gentle and maybe, like, I actually think it's an exquisite combination that you're bringing together your love for music. I know we haven't even had time to talk about it tonight, but I mean, you've actually been trained as a DJ, and that all started back in the day on that beach in Santa Cruz. Right.
Definitely planted then. If you had told me then, you're going to be a clarity breath worker, a DJ, an ecstatic dance leader. Even if you told me that you're really good at hooping, I'd be like, no, oh no, you're crazy. But that was actually one of the benefits of moving to Providence, Rhode Island, is that those things weren't here. I wasn't intimidated to start something like that because no one knew what was good or not good. It's like I can pick up a hoop and learn how to hoop now because no one here is any good. So so I didn't have that fear. And that those things that I did when I first got here were instrumental, and as I said, helping me to see myself as a leader in the community. So I'm seasoned now. I know. I'm like, I've brought ecstatic dance. Now I'm going to bring clarity breathwork.
And I love it that not only, and this is one of the blessings of technology, is not only can you serve people in Rhode Island, but I frequently get calls from people that are like in Arkansas or Ohio or something. And, they're welcome to fly me out there when it's safe to do so. But nowadays, with this blessing of technology, we don't have to worry as much about the geography. So people that are in these far off places, if they don't have somebody wonderful like you who can engage these modalities, now they can through these. We're using Zoom tonight, and I'm imagining that's part of how you share with your clients. So we've actually gone a little over time, so we're going to start winding it down. But it is, you and I know each other actually really well. And I love that I've learned so much just embellishing and filling in the gaps for things I didn't know. I love hearing, for example, how, your journey with overcoming cancer has also taken you deeper into wanting to explore. You'd already started breath work, but like, I want to really go for it. And you did your teacher training. And then also, in our journeys of motherhood and relationships, it sounds like there's so many ways where clarity breathwork can help you, not just try and figure it out with the mind, but to use the whole part of self. That to me is a big part of what somatic means. We engage also the body, not just the mind, which therapy tends to focus on.
And I'm pretty pleased that my 14-year-old son, who has heard a lot of emotional release happening in this house, is pretty darn cool with it at this point. And he's not going to participate, but he knows it's happening, and I am honored as a mom to be exposing him to an alternative healing, because I know he saw me go through a lot of emotional stuff that came up through the cancer journey too. So I think now he's realizing that when it's coming up now, it's being released. I can say to him, I can articulate, I'm going through a healing process right now. I'll be done in a little while. And I'll let him know, I'm done now. I'm okay. And he understands. And that's really important to me.
What incredible modeling. As a mother, it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to make, like, I'm going to use my words, but like sacred time or like a special time to honor those emotions and do it through breath. And I always make a lot of sound. Do they use sound in Clarity Breathwork?
Yes, I've been called
Yes.
a sounder, from those days of not having. Yes, my voice definitely, definitely came out and comes out, and I am definitely a sounder in breath work.
Great. I think sound is a huge part of letting it go. So incredible modeling for your son. I feel like we as parents in this era of parenting are bringing forth a whole new way for the next generation to be with feelings and process them. And I love this multidimensional. You're not only a gift to your friends and your community, but your son and even beyond. So we're going to make sure that the link to your event, remind me of the date again.
It is April 22nd. It's on Earth Day. So
Great. On what a perfect thing to breathe more deeply on Earth Day. So we'll make sure that the link goes out. It'll be listed on this video, both for my Patreons and I know wherever you end up sharing the video. I just want to mention for my patrons that it's actually not next week because my son is coming to visit, which I'm very excited about. But on the 24th, I will be offering a panel actually talking about what we're going to need to run group events, in-person events safely again. And we've got an Ayurvedic, like a biochemist coming in and somebody who runs big conferences. I'll be part of the panel. So yes, we'll drop the links in for all of you. Thank you for sharing so generously, Tara-Ma. This was
thank you,
so
Caroline.
beautiful to meet in this space. And I want to close just saying, I was moving, so I had a lot going on, so I wasn't tracking exactly when you're done your facilitated training for Clarity Breathwork, but I could feel the shift in you. I've known you 16 years, and it was like night and day, the shift. Yeah. And as somebody who like geeks out on all things energy, I was like, wow, there was a depth and a breadth and like I want to say a gravitas there. And you're pretty badass, even before this, but there was just this other whole layer uh, of holding self that I experienced in your energy body and in you post that.
I'm honored to hear that from you, Caroline. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Great. Well, we're going to wrap it up online for them. You and I will stay on and keep chatting even after this. But I look forward to seeing where all of this takes you. And I know you're going to send me, you actually have already, but I'll make sure all my patrons get all the links for all the things on where to find you. So that's super easy. All right. So I'm going to just wrap up. Whoop.